Welcome to Short Movie Channel. Today's movie begins with a news broadcast, where we see the World Health Organization issuing a warning about a new virus. They say this virus doesn't spread through the air like we're used to. Instead, it can only be transmitted through blood or droplets from sneezing. They call it the worm virus, because most of the infected people start having worms coming out of their ears and eyes. Because of this, the WHO urges people to report any infected individuals immediately so that action can be taken in time. The story then shifts to a high school, where we meet Emma, the new student who recently moved to town with her family. She wasn't happy about the move at all and is trying her best to adjust to the new situation. However, she doesn't have many friends, just 2 or 3 people she knows. Emma lives with her dad, mom, and sister, but her mom's job requires her to travel most of the time. Now, we get to know Emma's sister, Stath, who is the complete opposite of Emma. She quickly adapted to the new place and made lots of friends, including many guys. At the end of the school day, Emma walks out of the building, where Stath is waiting for her outside. However, Emma's attention is drawn to a particular guy standing near the school bus. When Stath notices this, she decides to help her sister get closer to him. So, she comes up with an excuse and invites the guy to ride home with them in their dad's car. Their dad, Michael, happens to be a teacher at their school. The guy agrees and joins them. On the way home, Michael is focused on driving while Stath keeps texting Emma, encouraging her to talk to the guy, whose name is Evan. But Emma is too shy to make a move. They stay like this the entire ride until Stath finally starts a conversation herself, and they all end up chatting and laughing together. As they're driving, Emma and Stath's mom calls Michael and tells him that she has an important meeting in a nearby state, and won't be able to come home that night. When they arrive at their neighborhood, they coincidentally find out that Evan lives nearby, which means they'll be seeing a lot of each other. He thanks them for the ride and leaves. Later that night, we see Emma, Stath, and Michael having dinner together, but it's clear they aren't close at all. Stath is glued to her phone the entire time, barely engaging in any conversation. When Michael asks her to put it away, she refuses and starts talking back to him disrespectfully. At this moment, we realize that Michael and his wife don't have a stable relationship, which is why Stath doesn't accept him as her mom's husband. The argument escalates until Stath storms off and leaves the table. After dinner, Emma goes up to her room and video calls her best friend, Gracie. They chat about Evan and what happened that day. But then, Gracie changes the subject and tells Emma that her mom has been acting strangely lately, eating excessively and behaving oddly. She says she feels like something isn't right, but she's just ignoring it and living her life as usual. Gracie then sends Emma a disturbing video from China, showing a man inside an elevator acting extremely weird. Suddenly, he spits blood onto a woman standing next to him, and then starts attacking her, biting her while she's still alive. The scene is horrifying, and Emma is so freaked out that she can't even finish watching the video. She quickly closes it. As she sits in shock, she hears a knock on her window. When she opens it, she finds Evan outside. He gives her his number and asks for hers. She hesitates for a second but then gives it to him. Once she sends him a message, he calls her immediately, and they start talking, enjoying each other's company. Emma then decides to go outside and meet him in the street. The two of them quickly grow closer and even confess their feelings for each other. But as they're talking, a man suddenly appears from Evan's house. We find out that this man is his stepfather, Bill. It's obvious that Evan doesn't like him at all. Bill tells Evan to come inside, and Evan leaves abruptly. Emma smiles and heads back home. As soon as she walks inside, she finds her dad sitting alone, looking upset. She sits down and talks to him, and he confesses that things haven't been going well for him lately, whether it's with his wife or even at work. He says his problems are starting to ruin his future. Emma tries to comfort him for a bit before heading to her room. The next day at school, we see Michael as he explains a lesson about viruses, mentioning the one that's been spreading around the city lately. He demonstrates it practically by bringing in a worm, showing how it enters people's bodies, and explaining that the worm can't breathe for long without eating. Also, if you suffocate it, it will escape from the body, and then you can pull it out using tweezers or something sharp. Among the students in the class, there was Ima, who was paying close attention to her father. But of course, she didn't really take it seriously, since she hadn't faced any situations like that before. Suddenly, during the lesson, Gracie starts coughing weirdly and runs outside. Ima gets worried and follows her, and as soon as she exits, she finds Gracie lying on the ground with convulsions. There's even a lot of white foam coming from her mouth, which is terrifying and gross at the same time. One of their classmates follows them and goes to check on Gracie, but Ima leaves him with her while she goes to get the doctor. Just as she walks away, Gracie stops moving and suddenly wakes up, spitting blood in the young man's face. That's when we realize Gracie has been infected. The doctor arrives and moves Gracie and the young man to isolation to prevent the infection from spreading. They take Ima and check on her, asking if she's felt any unusual symptoms recently. She says she hasn't had contact with Gracie for a while. When asked about what happened with Gracie last week, she explains everything, mentioning how her mom has been eating a lot lately. After the investigation, they leave. Because the virus has been spreading rapidly through the city, the government decides to close all public institutions, and the military is deployed on the streets to enforce a lockdown. They also implement preventive measures, and the situation has become extremely serious. We return to Ima as she walks home with her father, but her mom calls Michael to let him know that she's at the airport and doesn't know how to get home since there are no taxis available. Michael asks Ima to return home and lock themselves in while he goes to get her mother. Ima and her father are picked up by an acquaintance. On their way, they see people behaving strangely. Many are gathering their belongings and seem to be leaving. Later, they arrive home, scared. Ima sits and watches the news, learning that the virus has spread throughout the entire city, and the situation has become very dangerous. Even the government has implemented quarantine measures, isolating anyone infected. Ima tries to call Gracie, but there's no answer. She hears a noise in the street and, when she looks out the window, she sees a deer standing in the road. Suddenly, a helicopter appears overhead, and when she looks closely, she sees it carrying a huge box, probably related to the quarantine, likely transporting infected people there. When Ima looks back at the deer, it's gone, and that startles her, making her run inside. A few moments later, she receives a call from Michael. She picks up to hear the news. The military has sealed off all the roads, and no one can enter or leave the city anymore. Every city has become isolated, and Michael asks them to lock all doors and windows and not to open for anyone. He assures them he will check on them regularly. Once he ends the call, it's clear Ima is very happy because she gets to stay home alone and do whatever she wants. That night, we see them sitting together, but a long time has passed, and they haven't eaten. When they go to find food, they discover there's almost nothing to eat in the kitchen. They realize they'll have to make do with whatever they can find. Eventually, they find some sweets, which they eat to fill their stomachs, especially since they know they can't leave the house and there won't be any open stores. The next day, Michael talks about the situation, saying they'll try to handle any cases of infection with full determination to stop the spread. But Ima feels like something's wrong outside the house, so she gets close to the door, nervous. When she looks through the peephole, suddenly someone knocks, and she runs away. She tells her father, and when he opens the door, he reassures her that nothing's wrong. But suddenly, someone appears behind Ima and attacks her. We discover that it's Ima's friend CJ, who her sister invited over for a fun night. They had planned to scare Ima, and she had been laughing at her the whole time. Ima gets reminded that her father asked them to keep the door closed for anyone, but Ima's friend wasn't concerned about that. They take CJ upstairs while Ima goes to her room, upset and unable to sleep. So, she opens the internet and finds a post from Gracie's mom saying that Gracie is doing well and her condition is stable. Ima keeps scrolling through the comments until she sees a video. The video claims that the virus is a government-created bioweapon meant to reduce the population. However, Ima doesn't take it seriously, turns off her phone, and goes to sleep. The next day, she wakes up to a loud noise outside. When she goes out, she sees many military vehicles driving around, leaving a box in front of each house filled with supplies. She gets the box and opens it, finding antibiotics, bandages, and many other items to prevent the spread of the infection. They even included guidelines on how to handle any situation that may arise. However, she and her friends take it lightly, joking around, not really concerned about what's happening around them. At that point, they get a call from their mom. They think she's on her way, but they soon find out she's still at the airport, and their dad hasn't gone to pick her up yet. They hang up, realizing they can't do much about it. They sit down to watch the news, and they discover that disaster has struck the city. A few infected individuals managed to escape from quarantine and are now living among the people. So, the disease is much closer to them than they thought. However, she still doesn't take it seriously, and knows she's going out for a party with CJ that night. She remembers the rules her dad set for them, but it doesn't matter to her. She's determined to go, and of course, Emma refuses to go with her. Eventually, she gets a message from Ivan saying he's waiting for her at the party. Emma is surprised that Ivan would go to the party, and she asks him who told him about it. It turns out that Stath had contacted him secretly because she knew Emma wouldn't go with them, so she had to get Ivan to agree to go out with them. She gives in, and they all head out. That night, they have a great time, enjoying music and dancing. However, they notice a guy wearing a mask who tries to avoid contact with people, clearly hiding something. Meanwhile, Emma and Ivan sit together and try to find an empty room. When they can't find one, they go to the bathroom, and suddenly, they hear screams coming from below. Emma runs, worried about her sister, and finds her crying and devastated. She's upset because she caught CJ cheating with another girl. Emma stays with her sister to comfort her. Meanwhile, the guy with the mask grabs a girl by her clothes, and she screams for him to get away. Her boyfriend shows up to defend her, and the masked guy lets go of her and starts attacking the boyfriend. The fight gets brutal, and the boyfriend ends up on the ground from the beating. When the masked guy gets up, we see his eyes are red, an indication that he's infected with the virus, one of the symptoms. Everyone around them runs away to avoid getting infected. Stath and Emma find a room to hide in, peeking out through a crack to see what's going on. They watch as the infected guy kills anyone who gets too close to him. His appearance is terrifying, and maggots can be seen crawling all over his face. They spot a girl trying to escape, but the infected guy kills her. They stay hidden until things quiet down, and when they don't hear anything outside, they realize the guy must have left. They cautiously go outside, but by mistake, they step on broken glass, causing a loud noise. The infected guy hears it and comes running back. He goes after Emma, but she manages to avoid him. As he's about to catch her, another guy shows up and knocks the infected guy down with a wooden plank. Emma and her sister quickly run away. When they get home, Stath changes her clothes but doesn't tell Emma how she feels, especially since she knows she's probably been infected. Meanwhile, Emma is watching the internet and comes across a video of a man talking about the government being behind the virus. She continues watching his videos until she finds one where he talks about the parasites responsible for the virus. He says they are likely communicating with each other, and the group of infected people who escaped quarantine and disappeared together are evidence of this. This is a big revelation, but no one seems to be paying much attention to it, so Emma doesn't take it seriously at first. She turns off the video and tries to send a message to Ivan, but he doesn't reply. When she looks out her window, she sees the lights turning off, and she decides to stay with her sister for the night. The next day, they wake up to see a group of scientists going door to door, checking on people to see if they show any symptoms of infection. Stath and Emma don't have any symptoms, so they are told to stay indoors, but as soon as the scientists leave, Stath feels something strange on her neck. She notices what seems like a small worm, and she quickly hides it by letting her hair fall over it. She's obviously trying to keep it a secret, but the question is, how long will she be able to hide it? They sit down to watch the news and learn that when the police inspect a building, they mark it with something on the door. Later, they receive a call from their dad, who reassures them, asks them to lock up the house, and tells them to find the hidden gun to protect themselves. The call suddenly cuts off, and when they try calling back, there's no signal. Even the TV signal starts to weaken. When they open the internet, they are shocked to find that the Chinese government has started bombing the areas where the virus spread. They get scared and start searching for the gun until they find it. They take the gun with them because she knows how to handle it very well. At night, they see fire in the sky and realize that someone from the neighbors has called the police, and surely someone must be infected. When the police arrive, it turns out that the man reported his wife, who got infected. Shortly after, they notice that the fires are spreading everywhere in the city, and almost everyone left is infected. They get scared about what's happening and decide to escape the city. They leave, and they struggle to keep moving, but before they go, the mother calls out to Ivan, but Bill is the one who answers her. When he sees her, he quickly closes the window and enters again. Eva and Stacy continue on their way alone until they reach the end of the city. There, they find the army blocking the road and telling them to turn back because they can't pass. However, Stacy begs them to let her through because she wants to find her father. Unfortunately, no one listens to her. While they are talking to the officer, they see a car speeding toward them. Stacy runs toward the car and grabs her sister, pulling them both back. Meanwhile, the army starts shooting at the car that was speeding toward them, eventually destroying it. Stacy and the mother return home, and they sleep in fear. The next day, Stacy begins to feel something moving in her neck, but she doesn't tell her sister. She keeps it a secret. During this time, they hear the army's vehicles, and they warn everyone to hide any infected people. They say that if anyone is caught hiding an infected person, they will face legal consequences. Stacy locks herself in her room and heats a pin to try to apply it to the painful spot on her neck, but unfortunately it's of no use. She can't continue and takes the pin off. Later, she sits with her sister to have dinner in complete silence. Stacy thinks about confessing her illness to her sister, but changes her mind at the last minute. Instead, she shares a secret about her father, telling her that he had an affair with one of his students, and when her mother found out, she caused a lot of trouble, which is why their lives fell apart. She is devastated when she learns that her father did such a thing to her mother. Just as they are about to finish their conversation, they hear a knock at the door, followed by Ivan's screams. Stacy tells Emma not to open it, but Emma can't help it and opens the door. Ivan rushes in, and they quickly shut the door behind him. He says he's running away from an infected person who was chasing him, and the situation calms down a little when the infected person stops. However, they're startled when they see the infected person leap through the window. The creature looks terrifying and starts running toward them quickly. Stacy manages to shoot and kill it before it can reach them. Right after that, Stacy collapses, and they rush to check on her. At that moment, Emma realizes her sister is infected. She decides to move her to another room and lock her in. She doesn't want to report it to the authorities, but Ivan insists it's the right thing to do. Emma refuses because she knows that if her sister goes to the government, something worse might happen to her. She decides to keep her at home until their father returns and can treat her. Emma goes up to the roof to try and catch a signal, but she can't find any. Ivan joins her and tries to comfort her. At the same time, CJ arrives. He had come to apologize to Stacy for what he had done but was surprised to find out she was infected. He's confused about why she's locked in the room. Stacy tells him that her sister is infected, which is why she locked her in. She begs him to take her out quickly, but CJ moves closer without any hesitation. In that moment, Stacy pulls him and bites his arm. Emma and Ivan hear the noise and run to check on what's happening. When they get there, they find that CJ has died. Stacy explains that the disease is taking control of her, and she's not in her right mind. Emma is worried, but Stacy takes CJ's body and buries it in the garden. She remembers her father's advice about the viruses and how to get rid of them. She starts looking through his books and continues reading until she realizes she can choke the parasites in her neck. She uses a plaster, putting it on her neck to numb herself, so she doesn't harm herself. After she is certain it's safe, she enters and applies the plaster to the parasite, which starts to suffocate and comes out of her neck. As soon as it appears, she pulls it out, and Ivan stomps on it until it dies. She reassures Emma that her sister is okay now and allows her to rest. Later, when they are sitting quietly, they suddenly hear noise inside the house. They rush to see Stacy but find her running outside into a nearby house. They follow her, and when they enter the house, they find it full of infected people. There are many of them, and they have worms coming out of their mouths. They run and hide in another room, where they find Stacy hiding as well. She tells them the virus is still trying to control her, and she asks Emma to leave her because she feels like she wants to eat her. Emma refuses to leave her. Suddenly, they hear explosions nearby, and they realize the army is destroying the city with the infected people inside it, not knowing that there are still healthy people. Emma tries to save her sister by pulling her away, and they run until they end up in a swimming pool. After that, they look for their father and find a note from him. They learn that he's with their Uncle Peter, and if they can find the note, they can quickly reach him. So, they decide to try to reach their father, but what will they face next on their journey? We'll only know if they make a second part of the movie. For now, we've reached the end of today's film. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you liked the video.